afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming back after your coffees to join this session today, which is about the evolution of the App Store, the past, present, and the future. So in typical What Nights fashion, I've got some gifts, some prizes. There'll be a couple of questions throughout the deck, and if you get them right, you'll win a prize. So I want to start off the presentation with a quote. "Trust and attention. These are the scarce items in a post-scarcity world." I think this perfectly encapsulates the App Store and where we are and where we've come from in the last 10 years. The biggest brands in the world are the best because they have your trust and they have your attention. And these are the things that are the hardest to secure as we grow our businesses. And they become even rarer when consumers are surrounded by choice. If we think about the App Store, that's exactly what consumers are. They're surrounded. So I think to show you how relevant it is to the App Store, we'll look at where we started. The first question is, who was kind of hands up if you were developing mobile games like 10 years ago? Yeah, no, I was selling microwaves in a retail store. So I wasn't either. But when we look at how the last 10 years have gone, it's been pretty fascinating. So this is the top grossing charts in 2008 when the Apple App Store launched. If you look, everything on that chart is a paid app. We have TomTom in there for $100. And this is kind of where we were 10 years ago. We moved through the years, we see some redesigns, and hopefully some nostalgia kicks in for you as you kind of joined the industry to where we are today, which is obviously much more iconic in curated content, more about icons and ASO and the rest of it. So the first question for the prize, and the prize, by the way, is a tile. So you can put this on your keyring, on your bike, on your staff, and find out where they are at all times. The first question is, what was the name of the Google Play Store before it was rebranded? What was the original name of the Google Play Store? Anybody know? Yes. What was it? Yep, Android Market. That'll do. Nicely done. Your prize is here. I could throw it, but it's there we go. Top man. Well done. So yeah, Android Market. And as we move towards kind of the many iterations and evolution of the Google Play Store to where we are today, obviously they've got taller, but much more visual. They changed from like a developer portal to a real consumer-friendly and customer-facing store and catalog. So here's where we are today. Now, lots of things have changed other than just visuals of the store. I want to take a little look at where we are now and what are the kind of infrastructure changes behind and how that impacts the future of apps and mobile game distribution. So before I jump into this one, question 2, how much is an Apple App Store developer license? Does anyone know? So to actually distribute an app on the App Store, what is the annual fee? Yes, did someone say it down here? No. Okay, you sir, well done. I'll leave this here for you. $99. And the point there is that there's a really low barrier to entry to promote, to market a product on the Apple Store, right? Kind of people know this. And when we look at the major comparisons between 10 years ago and to now, there are two major factors that have contributed to a consumer friction shift. First one is market dynamics. So we touched on the low developer license fee. That stayed the same the last 10 years. What has changed is the overwhelming demand and the overwhelming supply of this consumer-driven market. So 2.2 million apps are now available on the Apple Store. It has over 500 million weekly visitors, the Apple Store, and 130 billion downloads. So there's a huge amount of demand, huge amount of supply, almost overwhelming. The second factor is the improvements we've seen to technology. So the file size cellular limit for transferring a game back in 2008 was 10 megabytes. Now it's 150 megabytes. The pricing models have been introduced to kind of extract more value from the market. So now we have freemium, premium, paidmium. Subscription, of course, is brand new. And then discoverability has slightly changed, but not kind of developed huge amounts as much to meet the demand. So we have like search ads now. We have pre-registration, which I will talk about because this is going to be a big factor in the future of app distribution. And of course, ASO, which is this kind of new rising giant on the marketing side of mobile games. So despite all of this kind of emergence of scale and improvements in tech, the consumer friction for the majority of developers, of like us in the room, has increased. I'm sure there's an app for everything, but now there's like 100 apps for everything. Same on the Google Play Store. The impressive scale, the low barrier to entry, the growth in technology and infrastructure, but still the challenge is the marketability. And I think the consumer friction points have now moved. They used to be, as we saw in the screenshot earlier, paid, like paywalls on the storefront, and now they've moved to kind of more smaller friction points, things that I'm going to talk about today, such as file size. This is kind of now a real big factor in decision making, and we've got some data from Google to show that. So before we get there, I think it's clear to see that the App Store has almost single-handedly created an entire human behavior and expectation, and it's clear that we now live in an on-demand world. If we look around at the services that we use all the time, and the companies that are really winning, they're the ones that are solving real-world consumer problems with minimum friction. All of these guys here are doing those things and really kind of raising a lot of excitement and awareness in the industry. I heard a stat the other day, I think it's something like 30 to 35% of all jobs in America will be on demand by 2030. So this is like on-demand, instant is going to be an ever more present element of what we do in the future. And we all know when friction goes down, consumption goes up. And there's elements of this creeping into the ecosystem already in terms of mobile gaming. Obviously, playable ads. AppOnboard has its own ad network, which helps publishers monetize their apps and helps developers acquire new users. This is kind of an instant element of gameplay. Then we have mini games and how it influences the social platforms, which is Line, WeChat. Facebook Instant Games is a big talking point at the moment, and there's talks here on that as well, and even Snappables. There's elements of it here, but there's not really necessarily the scale and the quality that people expect from their mobile gaming experience. So our question at AppOnboard is what about games? Mobile games are becoming richer, more in-depth, higher quality experiences. Nate made a good point earlier about kind of PC games moving to mobile. This is going to be like premium console experiences going to be arriving on in our hands. So this is something really key that we're interested to look at. And it brings more challenges when you have such premium quality experiences. Obviously, file size increases. This is the last 5 years of the Google Play Store average APK size. It's a pretty solid line. When we have this growth on file size, we have distribution challenges. So this is around the world, this is Google data as well. You see the challenge of marketing, of securing users and the impact on your funnel in emerging markets. So for every 6 megabyte increase in an APK size, the install conversion rate decreases by 1%. That's from Google. And we think like the logic around of emerging markets struggling is not everyone in these countries have unlimited Wi-Fi, unlimited data packages. So they actually can put a price on a free download, which is pretty significant. Also, there's an element towards consumers not having enough room on their devices, on their phones, actually to install the product if it's a certain size. There's a huge amount of lost installs because of this. So this is another element to consider. And just to put some numbers to this, so in terms of conversion rate of store visit to install, this is the increase in conversion when you reduce your APK size by 10 megabytes. So you can really kind of put a value on that extra feature you're looking to add, or that extra beautiful big image or 3D model, if it's going to increase the size. When you think about in India, the numbers are, if your app gets 10,000 installs a month in India, a conversion rate of 20%, a 10 megabyte reduction would result in an extra 13,000 installs a year. And if you think about these games and these products we're building, they're designed to last years. This is marginal gains that lasts and is very impactful for a long time. So the question is, what's the solution? Because we don't make big apps for the sake of it. We do it because they're so good. So the solution that Google have introduced is Google Play Instant. So these are instant experiences that live on the Google Play Store. Can I have a quick show of hands? Who's aware of kind of the Try Now button on the Google Play Store? Hands up. Okay, good. Half the room is good. So just for those who aren't aware, it's literally a button that appears on your Google Play product page, and you tap Try Now, and it will instantly kick open a experience of your product. They have to be under 10 megabytes, which obviously is a challenge, but they can literally be whatever you want to showcase in your product and encourage the user to install and be a high quality install. So some of the questions may be around, well, 10 megabytes is not is not much. What can we do with 10 megabytes? And this is exactly where AppOnboard specializes. So I want to show you a demo of one that we've made with the Game Insight team at Guns of Boom. This is under 10 megabytes, and this is their product. So you can see we're searching the Google Play Store. There might be some sound. Sorry if it booms. And there's a Try Now button. So you can see it all takes place within the Google Play Store. 3D models, particle effects, HD sound, smooth animations, it is all possible under 10 megabytes. And as I said, that's exactly what AppOnboard specialize in doing. Now, what better way is there to win a customer's trust and attention than doing it instantly on the store page with that premium experience? And naturally, since we've started working with Google on this, we've seen huge demand for this product in terms of helping the game developers convert and drive high-quality users. And you can really see the value of the product when you do a side-by-side comparison. So on the left-hand side, we're going to load CSR Racing as an organic user. On the right-hand side, we're not going to have a Try Now button. So the Try Now is going to be on the left. So take a look from CSR Racing 2. Look at the difference between the time taken from the intent to play. So the left will tap, we'll go into the product page. On the left-hand side, we'll tap Try Now, and the right-hand side, we'll tap Install. So we start the clock. So there's a short download, as the under 10 megabyte file is cached, opens up the demo, and I think it's around 8 seconds. Yeah, 8.5 seconds, you're in CSR Racing 2, which is a 2 gigabyte, bigger than 2 gigabyte. Obviously, people know this game. It's an amazing game, super high quality. This is true to form of the actual game itself when the user converts to install. On the right-hand side, we're going to just wait for that. No, we're going to speed it up. So ADX faster, we can see we've jumped through it. Almost 7 minutes later, from that same intent to play, the user's now in the game. Now, of course, on the left-hand side, the consumer still needs to install once they reach the end of the experience. But think about how much more willing they are to get through all the all the friction points that are approaching on the right-hand side. So it's 50 times faster with the Try Now to get to that gameplay content. Here's some of the friction points that we skipped past because we sped up the time on the right-hand side, on the organic flow. So obviously you get a file size warning. Are you sure you want to do what you're doing? Time required, we talked about save permissions, extra permissions, play service permissions. All these things are little friction points that many gamers are familiar with, but these are kind of eradicated when you use a Try Now. And think about how incentivized that user is going to be to get through all of these friction points when they've seen how awesome your product is. So the big question is, how does it work? And the answer is yes, very well. These are some of the case studies that Google have shared on their console, on their developer website. So some of the key ones to call out are Hothead, who they almost doubled their overall click-through rate on Mighty Battles on their store listing, and their new user acquisitions were up 19% through Try Now. OneSoft reported that their installs increased by 15%, with some markets such as Germany improving installs by almost 30%. So these are our Google presentations. With our direct customers at AppOnboard, we've seen similar results, some really, really fantastic LTV results, actually. So this is Jam City. We work with them on Cookie Jam Blast and power their Try Now. Their day 1 to day 7 retention rate increased by 29 to 32%. This is not an isolated case. Strike Force was one that we worked with very recently from Marvel. Not only was their retention significantly up, we saw massive increases on their average revenue per user, up to 50% on day 7, and their user conversion to paid, 32% on day 7. So this is benchmarking users that came through the Try Now and users that didn't come through the Try Now. It's not just a freemium game solution. It works with paid games. It works with non-gaming, and you can showcase anything you want within that experience. So one of the things AppOnboard spends a lot of time and has invested a lot into is the analytics suite behind the Try Now. So we can see everything that takes place in that demo, from clicks to swipes. We have heat mapping, which we can show to our partners. Because the key thing here is that it's just as important as your first screenshot in the store, just as important as your most important video UA channel in terms of creative. This is going to be seen by so many users that it's important to A, B, C, D, E, F test this as we move forward. So even since we started partnering with these guys, the early adopters, we've seen the Google Play Store change. This is it kind of just a few months ago. And now you can see video, the big call to action at the top has moved down into the screenshots. Now you have the icon, and the biggest screaming call to action is kind of try now, next to the install button. So it's going to be like the #1 marketing aspect that you can leverage on the page. So that's available now, like it's present. This talk is obviously around the evolution of the app stores and where we're headed. So I want to touch on things that I think are going to impact the future. So there's many different things that could come into play. There's a lot of talk around blockchain, around AR, VR, new platforms. One of the things I thought I'd focus on and share with the developers in the room is what are the things that we can control? What are the things that we can do right now, tomorrow, to help improve our businesses? So through the lens of controlling your controllables, I just want to filter some of these down. So now we can talk about pre-launch, new platforms, shareability, and new services. So in regards to new services, hands up who's seen this product. This is the Google Play Games app, which is available on Android in the Google Play Store. Hands up if anyone's seen this. One, and he works for AppOnboard. Brilliant. This is really, this was new to me before I joined. This is a Google-owned and operated product. It has over 1 billion installs. It has hundreds of millions of monthly active users, and this is could be a glimpse into the future of what app stores look like, at least for gaming. So this is a games-specific store. It can launch your existing games, you can discover new content through it, and there's an arcade section which services instant experiences. So you can see on Adventure Capitalist there's a play button. You can literally straight away play the game without leaving that experience right there. This could be an indication of what's to come, and users or Google Play developers who are using the Try Now are getting extra organic reach and featuring in this product just by adopting Try Now in some places. So that's pretty important for growing that funnel at the start. We can't not talk about the big news of the moment of kind of Epic talking about launching their own store. They circumnavigated the Google platform by sideloading Fortnite, as people know. So this is something to keep an eye on, not necessarily within our controllables, but with their favorable developer rates that they've talked about. This is definitely something to keep an eye on. Same with Netflix, who can navigate around App Store payments through their web portal. Will this come to play more in gaming? Potentially. Maybe it's not to the scale of the developers in the room, and it's left for kind of the largest brand available, but this is something to keep an eye on as well. Things that are directly in our control and have been more prevalent recently is kind of pre-launch campaigns. So we partnered with a studio based in LA who have a Try Now button on their pre-registration. So before they launched their product, they put the store page live, and consumers can register their interest for the game when it launches. They saw 10,000 pre-registrations a day by having this enabled. So that's specifically just through the Try Now demos as well. So this is a really important factor that I think is going to become more and more into the marketers in the room of how do you make your day one as most successful as possible. You can be in pre-registration for 90 days. So this customer has 90,000 users who said they're interested. Even with a 20% conversion, all those free installs are quite welcome. I think there'll be more UA campaigns or more campaigns specific to pre-registration. Supercell did a great job with Brawl Stars. They had 4 million pre-registered users for their launch. Of course, at the end of the pre-registration, you can share with friends, and shareability is something that's going to become more and more prevalent. If we look at another side-by-side comparison of how shareability can be impacted by Try Now and the future of the stores, it drives a really important question of what's the best UA source possible. I think people might shout networks, but most people would agree, the marketers in the room, that word of mouth is key. Really hard to do, really hard to measure. Virality is kind of almost a wild beast, but this is going to be key moving forward, and shareability is a big factor of that. So I'm going to get a text message, and it's going to have a link to a URL. One's going to have a Try Now enabled, and one's not. And you can see the difference again in terms of the reduced friction for those who have a Try Now. So it's a CSR example again. So we take just under 4 seconds from, hey, I think you'll like this game, why don't you play it? 4 seconds to the users playing it. And we've seen that video before on the right-hand side. It takes just 7 minutes to get that same experience. So in terms of the intent to play, it's pretty significant. And it doesn't just affect big games like CSR Racing 2. You don't have to have a 2 gigabyte game to take advantage of this. Here's an analysis we did for some of the biggest games in the industry and biggest apps, actually. And we saw, of course, the bigger products have a bigger saving. But actually, even on like the types of Candy Crush level, which is around 240 megabytes, that's up to 9 times faster to get to the gameplay experience than through a download. So it really does reduce those marginal gains, and increase the marginal gains, reduce the friction, and help drive that trust and attention that everybody needs. Last question for the last tile. There's a quote on the screen. Does anyone know who said it? It's like my favorite quote of all time. It's quite a recent one, actually. It's said by the guy who probably has one of the most successful e-commerce companies ever made. Anyone? He's been in the news recently for some... that's the one. Whoever said that. So Jeff Bezos, this is Jeff's quote. Whoever said that, well done. For you over there. So the reason I want to put this up is in terms of when we talk about the future of the stores. This is a fantastic quote for every business, I think, to think about the future. And I'm going to read it all to you. Bear with me, because it is that fantastic, and it does impact this. So I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And that's a very interesting question. It's a very common one. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that second question is actually the more important of the two, because you can build a business strategy around things that are stable in time. In our retail business, we know that customers want low prices, and I know it's going to be true from 10 years from now. They want fast delivery, and they want vast selection. It's impossible to imagine a future 10 years from now where a customer comes up and says, Jeff, I love Amazon, I just wish the prices were a little higher. Or Jeff, I love Amazon, I just wish you'd deliver a little slower. It's impossible. So the effort that we put into those things, spinning those things up, we know the energy we put into it today will still be paying off dividends for our customers 10 years from now. When you have something you know is true, even over the long term, you can afford to put a lot of energy into it. That's the entire quote. Much smarter man than me said it, but I really wanted to surface that because I think when we talk about the future of the stores, this is crucial. And AppOnboard is positioning itself with that mindset. So we don't think consumers are going to come up to us in 10 years' time and say, hey, we want apps with larger file sizes so we can fit less of them on our devices. We don't think platforms are going to say, I want apps that take longer to download, especially over 6G or 7G or whatever we are in 10 years' time. And we definitely don't think that developers are going to come up to us and say, we wish it took us longer to build apps. So that's where AppOnboard is investing, in reducing that friction and investing in a future where a zero-code solution can reduce that friction for every developer, platform, and consumer. We're starting with a partnership with Google on Try Now, and we have a lot more things coming this year. So thank you very much for listening, and I'd love to take some questions if there's time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.